when the male lead Makoto appeared. Willow was already pregnant with my child. Even so, it still couldn't stop the predetermined storyline. Once, just to be with me, she was willing to cut ties with her own family. Later on, however, she fell in love with the male lead and came to hate me to the bone. She found even a single glance at me unbearable. So, I lost completely and utterly. I lost love. And even lost my child along with it. Until one evening 5 years later, a small child knocked on my door. With a face far too serious for his age, he said, "Mom doesn't want me anymore. Can I stay with you?" Chapter 1. I froze for a moment and said nothing. Jack pursed his lips unhappily, lifting his delicate little face. He spoke with exaggerated seriousness. The teacher said parents have the responsibility and obligation to raise their children. The half-open door interrupted the rest of his sentence. I stepped slightly aside and said calmly, "Come in." The dim yellow light inside the room illuminated his slightly widened eyes. For some reason, his eyes flickered. He lifted his chin and snorted softly before obediently walking in. After closing the door, I turned around and saw Jack looking around curiously. When he noticed me looking at him, he immediately withdrew his gaze, gripping the straps of his backpack nervously. He stiffened his little face and said, "My name is Jack Wong." It sounded like an introduction, but also like a reminder that he was the child Willow and I had together. I knew, the moment I saw him, I was already certain of who he was, because his eyes looked so much like Willow's. Seemingly disappointed by my calm reaction, he turned his head away unhappily and stopped looking at me. I placed his small pale yellow backpack by the entrance and took him to wash his hands. Then I said, "Let's eat first." Jack obediently responded with an "okay." By the time I brought the food to the table, he had already climbed onto the chair by himself. I asked him why he had suddenly come to find me. Jack lowered his head and poked at the small green vegetables in his bowl. His little head, round and dark, hung low as he mumbled vaguely. "I argued with Mom. She kicked me out. Probably just a child throwing a tantrum and running away from home. Willow would likely come pick him up very soon. After all, 5 years ago, we had fought terribly over Jack's custody. There was no way she would abandon him now." My chopsticks paused. I couldn't quite describe the feeling in my heart at that moment. I didn't know Jack would come tonight, so I had only prepared a simple meal, 2 dishes and a soup. He was a picky eater. He didn't eat scallions or carrots, and after picking through everything, there were almost no vegetables left for him to eat. Jack stared bitterly at the mashed-up vegetable leaves in his bowl. He secretly glanced at me, then guiltily swallowed them anyway. When we first met, he had carried a hint of arrogance and childish pride. Now he was picky with food and disliked vegetables. It seemed that at the Liu family's home he was completely indulged and dearly loved. He probably hadn't been mistreated. I felt somewhat relieved. After washing the dishes, I waited for someone from the Liu family to come pick him up. I waited until 9:30. 6-year-old children get sleepy early. He took his pajamas out of his backpack, glanced around the room with his eyes, then pouted and said, "There's only one bedroom. Are we sharing the bed tonight?" I looked at the clock on the wall. For some reason, no one from the Liu family had come yet, so I had no choice but to compromise. Shrugging, I said, "Yeah, you'll sleep with me tonight." I had thought Jack would throw a tantrum. After all, this small and simple one-bedroom apartment was naturally far less comfortable than living at the Liu family's house. But Jack merely pressed his lips together, his eyes flickering slightly. After washing his face, he huffed and puffed while changing into his pajamas, then kicked his legs and climbed onto the bed by himself. Just like at dinner, although he looked reluctant, he had still silently eaten all the vegetables I gave him. Under the blanket he wriggled around and around until a small mound formed. Somehow he pulled out a fairy tale book from somewhere, then revealed just his eyes to sneak a look at me before urging impatiently, "Dad, aren't you going to tuck me in?" I rubbed my forehead helplessly. He looked quite pleased. Chapter 2. After Jack fell asleep, I found Willow Liu's number. I hesitated for a long time, but in the end I still didn't dial it. Willow and I have been separated for 5 years. At the beginning, we both believed we could fight against fate. Back then, my family's Wong Corporation suddenly went bankrupt. The Liu family broke off the marriage agreement and secretly arranged for Willow to marry into the Ito family, getting her engaged to Makoto Ito. In order to be with me, she called off the engagement with Makoto regardless of the consequences. She even insisted on cutting ties with her family. Because of that, her father locked her in the house for half a month. She wasn't allowed to go out, so she resisted by going on a hunger strike. I knelt at the gate for an entire night. When dawn came, she cried and threw herself into my arms. I thought things would get better. The bankruptcy would get better. Willow would get better. Our future would get better. But none of it did. My marriage with Willow was not blessed by anyone. Perhaps because Willow had always been so determined about me. After she became pregnant, even though our life was difficult, she never once thought about giving up the child. So no matter how hard or exhausting life became, I was determined to support this family. Later on, the child was born safely, mother and baby both healthy. I worked even harder to earn money, and life gradually got back on track, until one accident. A bundle of lumber on a tower crane slipped from its hook. The heavy wood crashed onto my head, and I instantly lost consciousness. My co-workers called Willow again and again for a long time, but she never answered. They sent me to the hospital. When I woke up, the person I saw was Willow, cold and distant. I didn't understand how someone could change so drastically overnight. So drastically that the look in her eyes when she looked at me was filled only with unfamiliarity and disgust. When she left us, she didn't even say goodbye. Makoto came to see me. From him, I learned the truth about this world. Because of an error in the system's timing, when the male lead arrived late, the female lead had already developed feelings for someone else. As the price for correcting the mistake, the female lead's misplaced emotions began to reverse. The more she once loved me, the more she now hated me. Makoto looked at me with a mixture of pity and sympathy. Before leaving, he glanced at Jack and asked quietly, "Have you ever thought about what will happen to your child in the future?" I suddenly froze, feeling somewhat lost. I didn't know who I should hate. Should I hate Willow for betraying me? But even she herself couldn't understand her own feelings. Should I hate fate? But what would that change? I couldn't change anything. At that time, my parents were also in a car accident on their way to visit me in the hospital. They fell into a coma and might remain vegetative for the rest of their lives. I was on the verge of collapse. Makoto's words kept repeating in my mind over and over again. I could only feel that this damn world was truly rotten. When I pushed open the window and looked down, Jack suddenly burst into loud cries. In my dazed state, a thought crossed my mind. If I died, what would happen to my son? Would this world even allow him to exist? Would Makoto tolerate him? Or would he, like me, be hated by Willow, abandoned by his mother once again, and eventually die quietly while everyone hoped for it? At that moment, it felt as though a voice was whispering to me, "Take him with you." As if I had lost my mind, I walked to the bedside, my hands trembling as I picked him up. But the next second, he suddenly stopped crying. With his reddened eyes, he looked up at me eagerly, as if no matter where we went, he had already decided to stay with me. I suddenly snapped back to my senses. I waved my hand as if trying to disperse those non-existent whispers. As a father, if all I wanted was to escape, wouldn't that make me unworthy of being a parent? Only then did I realize what kind of ridiculous thing Makoto's insinuations had almost pushed me to do. After Willow Liu returned to the Liu family, the old master of the Liu family quickly called for me. He wanted to fight for custody of the child. The meaning was simple. The child was less than 2 years old and would almost certainly be granted to the mother, let alone considering the huge financial gap between our two families. In youth, one never understands the taste of sorrow. The young master of the Wang family who once spent millions without a second thought had now fallen to such a miserable state. From beginning to end, Willow never appeared. She hated me so much that she wasn't even willing to look at me once. So I lost. I lost completely. I lost love. And I lost my child as well. It wasn't until something brushed against my arm that I came back to my senses. Jack hummed softly with his eyes closed and curled up, as if he had finally found a comfortable position and was sleeping soundly. He clutched tightly at the corner of my clothes, as if afraid that the moment he opened his eyes, I would disappear. Looking at his innocent, childish face, I couldn't help letting out a quiet sigh. If he knew that his father once almost tried to take him away in death, would he still come to find me? He would probably hate me before anything else. Chapter 3. By morning, Willow still hadn't appeared. I didn't know what she was trying to do. Back when the Liu family fought so fiercely for custody, the situation had been extremely ugly, yet now they could simply abandon him just like that. I woke Jack up early and drove him to school. The kindergarten he attended was not in the same city as mine, but fortunately it only took about an hour to get there by car. Before getting out of the car, he made me promise again and again that I would come pick him up after school. He clung to me, whining softly and refusing to let go. Then he suddenly noticed a car in front of the kindergarten gate. His eyes lit up. He hurriedly pulled me along and walked toward it. When we got closer, he deliberately slowed down, pretending casually to stand in front of a chubby little boy who had just gotten out of the car. As if on purpose, Jack swung our joined hands right in front of him. Then, in a loud voice that everyone could hear, he asked me, "Dad, you'll come pick me up after school, right?" It was the first time Jack had called me Dad. Perhaps because I had been absent for 5 whole years, even when he knocked on my door last night, he had never once called me that on his own. The chubby boy stared at me and said skeptically, "If you have a dad, why has he never brought you to school before?" Jack snorted and replied with a look of disdain, "My dad is a very busy man. He took time off specially to bring me to school today." He emphasized the word specially. Holding my hand, he walked all the way to the kindergarten gate in front of everyone, as if showing me off. making sure everyone saw. Before parting, he asked awkwardly once more, "You'll come pick me up, right?" When I didn't answer immediately, he glared at me. Then, sounding flustered, he whispered in a small voice, "You promised me in the car." Grown-ups aren't allowed to lie. Helpless, I crouched down and smoothed the collar of his shirt, which had flipped up. Then I ruffled his hair. His hair was dark and soft, and it felt nice to the touch. I smiled and said, "All right, I'll come pick you up." The corners of his lips lifted uncontrollably, though he tried his best to hold them straight. Raising his chin with forced maturity, he said with reserved dignity, I'll remember to wait for you." Only after his figure completely disappeared from sight did I finally withdraw my gaze. I went to find his teacher and asked about Jack's situation at kindergarten. The teacher hesitated, stammering for a while. In the end, she sighed and complained with a slight frown, "I know, what I say might not be very useful, but Mr. Wong, no matter how busy you are, you can't just neglect your child." Since he enrolled, no one has ever attended a single parent-teacher meeting. Now the other children in the kindergarten are all saying he doesn't have parents. If this continues, it'll be very harmful to his emotional development. No one had ever attended a parent-teacher meeting. Even if Willow disliked the child, couldn't she at least have sent a nanny or a housekeeper to deal with it? I frowned and pulled out Willow's number. After hesitating for a moment, I finally dialed it. I decided to talk to her properly. If Willow truly didn't plan to raise him anymore, I could take him back to live with me. I might not be able to provide the kind of life the Liu family could, but I could still give him a decent life and the freedom to make his own choices in the future. The moment I dialed the number, however, a ringtone sounded behind me. Realizing something, my fingers trembled slightly as I turned around, and then I saw Willow stepping out of a car. 5 years had passed. She seemed different, yet also unchanged. Her eyelashes lowered slightly as she glanced at the glowing phone screen in her hand. Her slender, pale fingers held the phone, and her cool expression was half hidden in the shadows. Unhurriedly, she raised an eyebrow and suddenly looked up. "Long time no see," she said. "Want to talk?" Unlike my own years of hardship and downfall, Willow had always remained elegant and composed. Her brows and eyes looked just as they had before, yet the gaze she directed at me carried an unfathomable depth. Even the dappled sunlight filtering through the tree branches seemed especially fond of her. I had heard that the jewelry brand she founded had become popular worldwide. I had heard that she had taken over the Liu Corporation. I had heard that she had secretly married years ago, but had no children. Memories from more than a decade ago, which I had deliberately ignored, surged back like a collapsing flood. A fine ache spread through my chest. Only when I saw her in that moment did I finally realize something. I thought I had let go, but I hadn't. The way she once wrapped my wounds with red-rimmed eyes when we were young. The way she smiled as she accepted my proposal with a ring I had made from woven grass. No one could have imagined that we would end up in such an embarrassing situation today. In truth, she hadn't changed. She simply no longer loved me. That was all. It had truly been a very, very long time. Willow. Chapter 4. We remained silent the entire way and found a cafe nearby. Before the coffee even arrived, I asked directly, almost as if to cover something up, "Do you still want the child?" Over the past 5 years, I had imagined meeting Willow again countless times, almost to the point of torment. So much so that now I was capable of pretending to be calm. Willow glanced at me and answered without much hesitation, her voice soft. "Of course I do." I frowned slightly, staring at the road signs outside the floor-to-ceiling window. I gave a quiet and stood up. I said, "Then remember to pick him up after school. If you don't have time for the parent-teacher meetings, you can let me know. I won't disturb you, Anne." I still couldn't say Makoto's name calmly. I clenched my fist. The sting of pain cleared my mind and forced me to finish the sentence. "I won't disturb your lives." I glanced at my watch and prepared to leave. As we passed each other, I suddenly heard Willow ask coldly, "So right now, you only want to talk about Jack with me?" My steps paused. I didn't quite understand. Everything between us had already been settled 5 years ago. She married someone else. I left in disgrace. It was that simple. Aside from Jack, what else was there to talk about between us? Willow let out a quiet laugh. Her dark eyes fixed on me as she spoke again. "Fine then. I don't want Jack anymore." She sounded completely justified, as if she wasn't the one suddenly changing her mind. I frowned and couldn't help asking, "What do you mean?" Willow lifted her chin slightly and tapped the seat across from her, gesturing for me to sit back down. She said, "I mean exactly what I said. If you want to raise the child, go ahead. Jack is yours." She blinked lightly and continued, "However, considering Jack's emotional well-being, every Friday night I will come to your current residence to spend necessary time with him. I will leave again on Monday morning." Listening to her stubborn and unreasonable demand, I only felt absurd, unable to hold back anymore. I reminded her, "We're already divorced." Willow let out a soft laugh. "Are we?" She shook a finger lightly. I never signed the papers. Only then did I fully understand what that sentence meant. Back then, during the lawsuit and the signing of the divorce agreement, I had assumed Willow hated me so much that she didn't even want to see me one last time. That was why she never appeared from beginning to end. She said she never signed it, but why come to me 5 years later? I wasn't narcissistic enough to think she still had feelings for me. Maybe the agreement had been lost. Or perhaps there was some issue with the paperwork that required a supplementary signature. Anything was possible. I shrugged and cooperated easily. Then we'll sign a new one. Without even looking up, Willow replied. I won't sign. Calmly, I said. Wouldn't it be better if we signed it and settled everything between us? She said. No. Speechless, I asked. Do you have any concerns? I don't want anything. I'll leave with nothing, she said. No. That single word left me both helpless and strangely dazed. Perhaps Willow herself had already forgotten, but when she was young, she had always been like this. That day had been my birthday party. Someone cornered Willow in a quiet spot. His gaze was frivolous and disrespectful, his words completely unrestrained. Afraid of causing trouble for the Wong family, Willow simply pressed her lips together and endured it in silence. The next second, bang, I kicked the man straight into the swimming pool. The commotion was huge. Many important figures from a city were present, and several elders looked very displeased. When asked what had happened, both sides insisted on their own version of events. To calm the situation, my father insisted that I apologize. I refused to admit fault and ended up being beaten with a stick. As expected, I was confined to my room afterward. I was lying face down on the bed, groaning from the pain, when the door suddenly opened. Willow walked in. She carried a medical kit, her eyes red, insisting on treating my wounds. Willow said irritably, "You didn't have to kick him. If you had just let him finish talking, it would have been fine. He wouldn't have dared do anything to me." In a small and guilty voice, I said, "I'm sorry." She paused for a moment, then softly said, "Not listening." I smiled helplessly and reached for the medicine. "I'll do it myself." She slapped my hand away. No, my arm was injured, and I couldn't help letting out a sharp breath. She immediately looked panicked. "Does it hurt a lot?" I smiled and said, "It's nothing, just a small injury." She frowned and said, "Don't pretend to be tough." Then she tapped my forehead. In front of me, "You're never allowed to pretend to be tough." I suddenly came back to my senses. I tried my best to hide the bitterness in my eyes, but it felt as though I heard her voice from many years ago again. "You're not allowed to pretend to be tough." Willow sat in the light and smiled faintly. Tiny particles of dust floated through the sunlight, and the familiar outline of the past had already quietly changed with time. She raised her eyes and lifted her brows slightly at me, as if responding to something I had said earlier. She said, "George, there's no such thing as settling everything between us." Chapter 5. I don't quite remember how our conversation ended. I only remember that in the end I was so angry that I didn't even say goodbye, because Willow and I had parted on bad terms. I wasn't sure whether she had just said those things casually or if she truly intended to follow through. After hesitating for a moment, I still didn't go back. Maybe I had been working too much overtime recently and wanted to take a day off. Or maybe it was the role of being a father, one I had been absent from for 5 years, quietly stirring inside me. I simply didn't want to break my promise to Jack. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the kindergarten let out. Most of the children in this kindergarten came from influential families. Among the luxury cars coming and going, I saw a Bentley stop in front of Jack, so I didn't walk over. I turned around and slowly walked back the way I had come, suddenly feeling that all the thoughts I had earlier were ridiculous. What was I even thinking? How could she possibly let the child go with me? The Bentley quickly drove away, kicking up thick dust as it passed by. For some reason, I suddenly thought of that young, childish face. We probably wouldn't see each other again. Almost unconsciously, I turned back to take one last look. After the car left, the road across the street, previously blocked from view, came into sight. Jack was standing alone at the kindergarten gate. His round eyes met mine across the distance. His eyes immediately lit up. He was about to run toward me when the teacher beside him quickly raised a hand and stopped him. He frowned, looking a little angry as he said something to the teacher, afraid he might dash across the street recklessly. I realized that before I even thought about it, I had already taken several steps toward him. The teacher saw me and finally allowed Jack to come over. He ran toward me, panting slightly, his dark eyes shining brightly. Only when he got close did he slow down. Even then he pretended not to care, looking shy yet happy as he said, "Why, you really came to pick me up." His soft little hand cautiously held onto my fingers. When he saw that I didn't pull away, he pressed his lips together and secretly glanced up at me before gripping tighter. I gave a quiet and asked him uncertainly, "You're not going with your mom?" At the mention of Willow, Jack's cheeks puffed up like a little balloon ready to explode. "I don't want her," he said angrily, "and she wasn't here to pick me up." She said it's very tiring for you to drive me to and from school. She said if I keep insisting you pick me up every day, it'll bother your work. Looking quite proud of himself, he continued confidently, I'm not as dumb as she is. Today I talked to the teacher about transferring schools. That way you won't have to spend so much time driving me to school anymore. He lifted his little face, looking expectantly at me as if waiting for praise. I couldn't help patting his small head. The road home was heavily congested. After stopping by the market to buy groceries, the sky had already begun to darken by the time I held Jack's hand and walked home. As if remembering something suddenly, he muttered casually, "Oh right, Dad. Tomorrow after school a driver will come pick me up. Mom said I should go home tomorrow and take all my clothes with me, but I'll still come back to sleep here. Don't forget about me." Tomorrow was Friday. I instinctively tightened my grip on the plastic bag containing the ingredients for braised pork. After a brief pause, I said, "Okay." Children tend to forget things quickly. Perhaps after just one weekend, his family would coax him back home and he would forget all about this. Every time we meet, I treat it as if it might be the last time, because only by thinking that way can I avoid feeling disappointed during the long periods of waiting. Chapter 6. By 10:30 on Friday night, Jack still hadn't come back. Calmly, I folded up the pajamas Jack had thrown beside the bed that morning and stuffed the extra dishes I had made into the refrigerator. I turned off the lights. In the darkness, I sat there in a daze for a while before closing my eyes. When I woke again, the sound of rain pattering against the window filled the room. The sky was barely light. After a whole night of nightmares, my head felt like it was splitting apart with pain. There were several unread messages on my phone. Before leaving yesterday, Jack had grabbed my pant leg and stubbornly insisted on getting my phone number. The earliest voice message had been sent at midnight. His tone sounded a little guilty, fierce on the surface, yet also as if he were explaining himself. The message read, "I didn't mean to be late. I had my clothes ready at 6, but Mom got sick again. She didn't seem to have the strength to bring me over. She's really annoying." The second message came half an hour later. This time he sounded cautious, with a faint sob in his voice. "Dad, are you angry? Did you stop wanting me again? I don't want to stay here either. But I can't do anything about it. I don't have the driver's phone number." The last message had been sent 10 minutes ago. He had taken a photo of the instructions on a box of fever medicine and asked what the words said. Then he asked whether children could take that medicine. I immediately called him back. The call was answered within a second. Soft sniffing sounds came from the other end. "Dad." My phone had automatically switched to do not disturb mode during the night. I could hardly imagine how anxious and helpless Jack must have been the entire night. I had to stay calm. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the phone tightly and asked in as steady a tone as possible, "Do you have a fever? Where exactly do you feel unwell?" A sneeze sounded through the receiver. Instead of answering my question, he asked cautiously, his voice thick with a cold, "Dad, can you come pick me up?" I already knew the answer. I couldn't refuse. Chapter 7. Following the location Jack sent me, I arrived at a villa district in a city. It seemed someone had informed security in advance, because the guard didn't give me much trouble and let me in easily. Standing in front of the house, I couldn't help feeling that the villa looked strangely similar to my old home. Just as I was about to press the doorbell, a hand suddenly reached out and blocked me. Through the doorbell camera screen, I saw Makoto's reflection. My heart sank, and the tension in my chest tightened instantly. Makoto frowned, clearly confused. His left hand landed on my shoulder as he asked, "George, what are you doing here?" I shoved his hand aside. Under his stunned gaze, I said expressionlessly, "I'm here to pick up Jack." Makoto froze for a moment. Then, as if recalling something, he said meaningfully, "Honestly, we shouldn't have fought you for custody back then." He adjusted his glasses and continued in a helpless tone, "You know how it is. Willow doesn't like that child. He's stubborn and difficult, no matter what. He refuses to call me Dad." Then he added casually, "Oh right, you experienced that before, didn't you? Going against the protagonist never ends well." He said it with a joking smile, but that single sentence dragged me straight back to that freezing winter 5 years ago. This time, however, I replied immediately, "He already has a father. He doesn't need a second one. As for the bad ending you mentioned," I stepped closer to him and stared directly into his eyes, speaking word by word, "You know exactly what happened back then. You should also know that I have nothing left now. There's nothing else I can lose. If you want to try something, go ahead." I smiled faintly. My life's already worthless anyway. If that day really comes, before I go, I'll make sure to take you with me. Makoto instinctively stepped back, clearly not expecting me to threaten him so directly. He clenched his teeth but said nothing. Ignoring him, I pressed the doorbell. Not long after, the door opened outward. Behind it appeared a pale, tired-looking face. Willow clearly hadn't expected to see me here. Subconsciously, she asked, "How did you?" In the next instant, her gaze turned cold, almost indifferently. she said. Get out. Because of Makoto's appearance. Was everything from 5 years ago about to repeat itself? A trace of self-mockery tugged at the corner of my lips. I said, "Don't worry, I'll leave once I take Jack." But unexpectedly, Willow suddenly grabbed my wrist, as if she had finally lost her patience. Without saying a word, she dragged me inside the house and slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Before the door closed, I clearly saw Makoto's smug smile freeze on his face. I stared blankly at Willow. Wait, did she mistake me for someone else? Chapter 8. The place where our skin touched was burning hot. The scorching sensation told me it wasn't an illusion. Willow lowered her voice and explained. I wasn't talking about you. Only then did I realize that I might have misunderstood something. Feeling slightly embarrassed, I withdrew my hand. She simply stared down at her now empty palm. Her fingers curled slightly before she picked up her phone and called the security guard. With a cold expression, she said, "Didn't I tell you not to let him in?" From the other end of the phone came a chaotic stream of apologies, followed by something else I couldn't quite hear. Not long after Willow hung up, the other party sent over a surveillance video. She handed the phone to me. I looked confused, so she explained. "I never invited Makoto here. He sneaked in behind you." When I didn't take the phone, she shoved it into my hand impatiently and then carefully folded my fingers around it one by one. With a serious expression, she said, "Evidence. Hold on to it." That was when I caught the faint smell of alcohol. Wasn't Willow someone who got drunk after just one drink? Only then did I realize that the Willow standing in front of me seemed a little different from usual. My vision darkened slightly. Other than me, probably no one knew just how troublesome Willow could become when she was drunk. Under Willow's watchful gaze, I had no choice but to steel myself and finish watching the surveillance footage. She stood beside me the entire time. When the video ended, she stared at me expectantly, clearly waiting for my review. I laughed nervously and awkwardly tried to change the subject. "You seem to have a fever." She reached out and touched my forehead. After thinking about it very seriously for a moment, she said solemnly, Seems like it." Great. Completely hopeless. I couldn't help sighing. At that moment, Jack came trudging out of the room, dragging a suitcase almost as tall as his shoulders. When he saw me standing in the entryway, he froze. Then he dropped the suitcase instantly. His eyes were already red as he ran toward me. "Dad." Willow looked displeased. She pulled Jack's hands off my leg and said indignantly, "Don't call him that randomly. That's my husband." Jack stumbled from the push. His little face was flushed from the fever, and he looked so angry he was about to cry. Staring at her fiercely, he shouted, "Are you a robber or something? Dad clearly came here to find me." My ears hurt. The two of them were chattering nonstop, like raising two sparrows. Before I could say anything, Willow had already grabbed my arm and dragged me into the bedroom with a cold expression. Jack refused to accept it, kicking his short little legs. He tried to follow, but Willow simply pressed a finger against his forehead and pushed him back out with a blank expression. Bang. The door shut. The world finally became quiet. Chapter 9. At some point, the door lock must have been upgraded to a type I didn't know how to open. After struggling with it for a while and getting nowhere, I listened carefully, not hearing Jack crying outside the door. I felt slightly relieved. When I turned around, I saw Willow staring at me with an unhappy expression, holding a medicine box in her arms. She shoved the medicine box into my arms and said concisely, "You're sick. Take medicine." I had no idea what they had been doing last night for both of them to end up with fevers. Resigned, I began looking for the medicine for her. At that moment Willow quieted down, but she kept staring at me without blinking, as if afraid that the moment she blinked, I would disappear. I broke a pill in half and placed it in her palm, then negotiated with her. "Jack needs to take medicine too. Could you open the door for me?" The moment she heard that, Willow's hand froze in midair. She didn't take the medicine anymore. Her eyes slowly reddened, and in a small, aggrieved voice she complained, "You're always like this. You only care about him, never about me." I nearly choked on my breath. When had I ever? But suddenly I remembered the question Willow asked the day we met again. "So right now, you only want to talk about Jack with me?" So, was that what she meant back then? Trying to reason with someone who gets drunk after one glass and becomes jealous was pointless, so I quickly changed my approach. "There's no water here. I'm afraid you'll choke on the medicine. How about I go out and pour you some water?" Willow tilted her head and looked at me for a while, as if carefully verifying whether what I said was true, but she didn't open the door. Instead, she calmly walked back to the table, lifted a wine glass, raised her chin slightly, and said with composed dignity, "No need to go out. I have water." Then she swallowed the pill with the red wine. It happened so fast I didn't even have time to stop her. My vision darkened. My first reaction was relief that it wasn't an antibiotic. I hurriedly flipped through the medicine instructions and searched online. After confirming there were no cases of toxic reactions between that medicine and alcohol, I finally relaxed. Only then did I realize my whole body was covered in cold sweat. Helplessly, I said, "Willow, open the door. I need to drink water." Willow raised the half-finished wine glass and handed it to me with an innocent expression. I glanced at it and mercilessly pointed out, "That's red wine." "It's red. Is the water in your house red too?" Willow responded with a guilty little "oh." She stood there hesitating for a moment before slowly walking to the door and opening it. I stared at the now open doorway in surprise. She hadn't softened even when Jack had a fever. She would rather swallow medicine with wine than give in even slightly. Yet now she had compromised so easily, just because I said I wanted water. Willow stood by the door, looking so sleepy she seemed about to fall asleep. She said, "Then remember to come back." Chapter 10. After coaxing Jack to take his medicine and go to sleep, and promising him again and again that I wouldn't secretly leave, I hesitated for a moment before returning to Willow's room. It was only because I didn't want to see tomorrow's ridiculous news headline. Eldest princess of the Liu family dies at home after taking medicine with alcohol. That was definitely the only reason. Absolutely nothing else. Pushing open the half-closed door, I saw Willow sleeping quietly on the bed. I tugged at the blanket beneath her. Good. It didn't move. I didn't dare touch her directly, so I grabbed a corner of the blanket and wrapped it loosely around her, turning her into a cocoon. In the dim bedroom, I silently watched her for a moment. Just as I was about to leave after completing my mission, the phone on the bedside table suddenly rang. A song played as the ringtone. Pear blossoms fall again in the courtyard. Another year gone by. Moonlight spills across the empty steps in the quiet night. In dreams the flute and drums play the old melodies. When I wake, tears stain the rouge upon my face. Little Mountain, recited again and again. I froze. Why did this song sound so full of longing and the sorrow of fading beauty? The caller was Old Master Liu. No matter what, this was not a call I should answer. I had just turned to leave when a hand suddenly grabbed my sleeve from behind. The thin blanket slipped from Willow's shoulder. She clutched my sleeve tightly, her expression dark as she stared at the ringing phone. As if afraid I might leave, she dragged me quickly to the door and locked it in front of me. Then she poured the remaining wine from the bottle into a glass, and dropped the phone into it. The phone kept ringing stubbornly in the wine for a while before the screen finally went dark. After finishing all that, Willow turned to look at me, blinking. She said, "Hide." What the hell? Anyone who didn't know better would think someone was about to come catch us cheating. I assumed Old Master Liu was coming and she wanted me to hide. The thought made me feel both embarrassed and miserable. I shrugged. "There's no need for that. I'll leave right away. I wouldn't put you in a difficult position." But Willow said nothing, and she still didn't let go of my sleeve. She first dragged me to the walk-in closet, trying very hard to walk in a straight line, but still stumbling crookedly. So she still wasn't sober. The closet was half open, with no wardrobes large enough to hide someone. Unsatisfied, Willow dragged me back out. She searched around the bedroom for a while before staring thoughtfully at the bed. Then she ordered me to hide under the blanket, and got angry when I didn't listen. The moment I poked my head out from under the covers, I heard Willow muttering to herself, "No. I should hide too." I was speechless. "Hide in your own house." The next moment, she climbed under the blanket with me. Darkness covered everything. I heard her sigh in relief as she murmured, "Now nothing will happen." My heartbeat suddenly skipped. For some reason, a memory surfaced in my mind. 5 years ago, Willow Liu had nearly broken ties with the Liu family for me, until the day she received a phone call from Old Master Liu saying he was critically ill. The illness had been fake. Willow was trapped at the Liu family home and couldn't return. Meanwhile, rain poured down outside. A tower crane operating illegally slipped its load. I was rushed to the hospital. After that day, storms came from every direction, and everything changed. My parents were in a car accident. Willow's love and hatred were reversed. All the cruelty fate threw at me completely crushed me. I didn't know what to do anymore. I was just so tired. A trembling fingertip touched my cheek. Willow's breath was burning hot from the fever as she wiped the corner of my eye. She said seriously, "It's okay. They won't find us." My vision blurred. Only then did I realize I had started crying, but I couldn't say a single word. With a bitter smile, I said, "I really can't stand you." I couldn't stand her appearing again. I couldn't stand her pushing her way back into my life. I couldn't stand the fact that she had done nothing wrong. Willow grew quiet. She softly said, "Oh." Tilting her head, she asked in confusion, "Do you hate me now? Did someone cast the emotion reversal magic on you too?" My tears finally fell. When I still didn't answer for a long time, she suddenly said, as if trying to distract me, "Shoo, the flowers are falling." But there were no flowers here, and no magic. She had never told me to hide because she was trying to cover something up. What she meant was, hide. Don't let fate find you. Chapter 11. That evening, I took Jack with me. He clung to me and refused to let go. Willow's phone was broken, and she had fallen asleep again. I asked Jack if he knew the housekeeper's phone number. Jack pulled out his children's smartwatch and tapped on a contact name. In his clear, childish voice, he said loudly, "Aunt Lynn, my mom has a headache again and drank alcohol. Can you come to the house?" The person on the other end agreed quickly. She seemed very accustomed to Willow being like this. I couldn't help asking him, "Does your mom often have headaches?" Jack answered as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah, mom always has headaches when she feels bad. She drinks a little wine. It works better than sleeping pills. Willow used to get drunk after just one glass. In the past, I was always the one who helped block drinks for her. Now she was using alcohol as medicine." When Aunt Lynn finally arrived, I pulled a suitcase with one hand and held Jack's hand with the other. Every few steps, he would turn his head to look behind us, as if worried that Willow might suddenly appear like she had that morning and take him away. Just before we stepped out of the gate, Aunt Lynn suddenly called out to me. She told me that Jack's transfer procedures had already been completed. From now on, we wouldn't have to keep traveling back and forth between South City and a city. I paused, surprised it had been handled so quickly. After thinking for a moment, she added, "Actually, Willow usually isn't like this." It was obvious she had seen the mess in the bedroom earlier. With some difficulty, she continued, "As for today, today was probably just an accident." I smiled. I know. How could I not know? When Willow first drank alcohol at 18, she had taken only a single sip before collapsing asleep on my shoulder. When I carried her home, she suddenly stood up again. I thought she had sobered up, but instead, with a completely expressionless face, she poured an entire bag of fish food into old Master Lou's beloved fish tank, mixed the kitchen sugar into the salt jar, and casually tossed the key to the confinement room into the pond. Her eyes were unfocused and her steps unsteady, yet she stubbornly dragged me to sit under a tree and refused to let me leave. Then she began weaving something with her hands. Petals drifted down in the wind. I looked up, and through the falling rain of petals, I met a pair of bright eyes. She stared at me blankly for a moment. Then she raised a pair of rings woven from grass and urged me, "Don't waste such a romantic atmosphere. Hurry up and propose to me." After we exchanged the rings, she added, "One for each of us. Don't lose them." Then she completely passed out. The next day when Willow remembered everything she had done, she was too embarrassed to even look me in the eye. From that day on, she never touched alcohol again. Thinking about the past, I couldn't help smiling again, but when I lifted my head, I saw that Willow had woken up at some point. She stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at me. Jack reacted as if facing a great enemy. He grabbed my hand and immediately pulled me toward the door, whispering urgently, "Dad, let's go." Willow didn't chase after us. I only heard her say softly, "See you next time." So soft as the lips I once kissed that year, as soft as the moment I held that grass ring and proposed to her, so soft that it almost felt like nothing more than my own illusion. Then, until next time, if there is still a next time. Chapter 12. After Jack transferred schools, his new kindergarten was very close to my home. For nearly a week afterward, Willow didn't appear again. I was almost getting used to this kind of life, until one day, the editor-in-chief suddenly called me into her office. Her expression was strange as she asked indirectly, "George, does your family happen to have some kind of powerful background?" I looked confused. "Huh?" she said. "Look, Miss Lou from the Lou family. This is her first ever exclusive interview, and she specifically requested that you be the one to interview her." I stared at her, completely baffled. The newspaper obviously wouldn't miss out on such an incredible opportunity. On Friday afternoon, Willow happened to be coming to South City for Fashion Week. Before the event, she had about an hour of free time. As usual, I prepared an outline in advance. In the end, I decided to focus the interview on the jewelry brand Willow had founded in recent years, and I deliberately avoided the kind of gossip the public loved most, her personal life. After all, Willow and I both knew exactly what had happened back then. It felt as though an unresolved tension had been hanging over me all week, reaching its peak when Friday finally arrived. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Inside the lounge, Willow sat elegantly on the sofa, wearing a custom haute couture dress, her long legs crossed. I placed the recorder in the middle of the table. After asking a few routine questions to help the interviewee relax, I moved to the main topic. "I've heard that the Lou Group had never been involved in the jewelry industry before. What opportunity led Miss Lou to establish the flower brand?" Willow had wanted to study jewelry design since middle school. Later, the brand flower had exploded in popularity around the world almost overnight. Usually, when asked this question, most people would talk about how they first encountered design in their youth or how their interest began. But Willow simply blinked at me and said, "To find someone." My fingers curled slightly without me realizing. Then I heard her continue casually, There's someone who hid from me because of fate for a very long time. I couldn't find him, and I was afraid he wouldn't be able to find his way home. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and continued calmly. Flower appearing all over the world was never a coincidence. The giant screens in shopping malls and subways, the collaborations with major IP brands, you can see Flower advertisements everywhere. Looking at me, she smiled softly. This was our agreement. If one day he sees Flower, I want to tell him, don't pretend to be strong. I'll keep waiting for you to come home. My hand trembled. I dug my fingernails hard into my palm, forcing myself to remain calm as I moved on to the next question. As far as I know, aside from Flower's designs, the brand is also widely known for its charitable work. For every order placed, Miss Lu donates a considerable amount of money, Willow replied. That's right. Every year we allocate a portion of our income to charitable causes, she added. Just like the Flower brand you mentioned, every year we donate part of the funds under my husband's name. I finally couldn't hold back anymore. Turning off the recorder, I said helplessly, "Hey, can we be a little serious? This is work." Willow blinked and replied calmly, "I'm being very serious. That really is the reason Flower was founded. Or are you trying to guide me to answer in a certain direction?" Her tone carried a faint hint of teasing intimacy. She added, "Mr. Wang, you didn't used to be like this. Treating people differently like that isn't very professional, is it?" I was speechless. The question had been thrown back at me, so I had no choice but to turn the recorder on again and continue documenting the interview. She said, "I've already made a will. After my death, part of my assets will go to charity, and the rest will be placed in a trust and entirely belong to my husband. Yes, you can understand it that way. If I die, he will become the sole beneficiary." Then she said, "What, you mean my son? It's fine, as long as he doesn't starve." I was completely speechless. I barely managed to finish the entire interview process. Before I could say the usual closing remarks, Willow suddenly asked, "Where's the ring?" Almost instinctively, I replied, "I lost it long ago." She walked closer to me with an unreadable expression. Then she raised her hand. In her palm lay a ring woven from grass. She said, "If you lost it long ago, then what is this?" I froze. Subconsciously, I touched my pocket. It was still there. Damn, I'd been tricked. When I looked up again, Willow was staring at me with long dark eyelashes and a faint, knowing smile. My disguise had been exposed, and I suddenly felt both embarrassed and irritated. Chapter 13. Speechless, I asked. "What exactly are you trying to do?" She replied, "Isn't it obvious enough?" Willow sat back down, her expression cool as she said, "I'm piecing together the future that should have belonged to us." This was a wound that had never healed for me, something I couldn't bear to touch. I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to repeat the same mistakes, and I couldn't imagine whether one day in the future Willow might look at me again with that same cold, disgusted gaze. But then I remembered Willow's inexplicable headaches. I remembered how someone who never drank alcohol had begun using it to numb herself. I remembered the trust in her will, and I remembered that conversation from years ago, until we met again after all those years. Only then did I learn that after I threw everything away and ran from it all, there had been someone searching for me the entire time, as if she had seen straight through my thoughts. Willow said, "Remember to leave the door open for me tonight." I didn't understand. What? She slowly smiled and reminded me meaningfully. "Today is Friday." For some reason, I suddenly remembered the day we reunited, when she had said, "For Jack's emotional well-being, I'll come to your place on Fridays to spend time with him." For some reason, that memory made me panic a little. I quickly said, Well, the interview's over, right? I should get going." Then I suddenly remembered, I hadn't turned off the recorder earlier, which meant all the nonsense we said afterward had probably been recorded too. Flustered, I reached for the recorder on the table, only to realize it had already been turned off. Willow let out a soft laugh. Looking as though she had seen through me completely, she teased, "Look at you panicking. I turned it off for you already." At that moment, her assistant opened the door to remind her that the event was about to begin. Willow stood up and waved at me. A scattered gust of wind blew through the room, and I heard the faint rustling sound. When I lifted my eyes, I saw the wind pass behind Willow's silhouette, and the flowers of 18 years old fall once more. Chapter 14. My mind was a mess. I refused the assistant's suggestion that I wait for Willow to finish her event so we could pick Jack up together. Instead, I went alone to the kindergarten gate with my backpack. Many parents were gathered outside. Children were gradually being picked up one after another, but Jack hadn't come out yet. Then I saw Makoto. I didn't know what had happened to him, but he looked far more haggard than the last time I saw him. He pushed through the crowd and walked up to me. With a cold laugh, he suddenly said, "You must be feeling pretty proud of yourself right now, huh?" I frowned, not understanding what he meant. He muttered to himself, "I should have realized it earlier. The little one is sick, And the big one's brain isn't working either. I shouldn't have believed Willow had already given up on you. I even brought Jack to find you. So that night, it had been Makoto who brought Jack to me. Because of the system's interference, Willow had searched for 5 whole years and still couldn't find me. Maybe Makoto thought Willow had finally given up on me. Or maybe he thought that after abandoning Jack, the burden, he could find a way to win Willow over again. He said. Back then she hated you so much. After the Liu family locked her up for more than 10 days, the first thing she did after getting out was go to the hospital to see you. She had headaches so bad she fainted and was hospitalized. Everyone hid the truth from her and forced you to divorce her. When she woke up, the first thing she did was look for you again. Grinding his teeth, he said. I spent 5 entire years trying to win her over. Even a stone should have warmed up by now. But one of them wouldn't acknowledge me as a father even though he never had one. And the other would rather suffer in pain than accept me. Both of them, so damn stupid. Just then Jack came out of the kindergarten. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and he ran toward me. Makoto seemed to calm down slightly. With a dark expression, he said. Do you know what she did afterward? She went to the hospital and had surgery. She'll never be able to have children again. Jack will be her only child. And she even made a will leaving all her property to you. For the system, a female lead like that has no more value to conquer. My mission failed. According to the system's judgment, no matter how the one carrying out the mission intervened, the female lead's established character had already completely collapsed. So the mission failed. Hatred filled his eyes. Suddenly, I had a terrible premonition. The next second, Makoto rushed toward Jack. I saw the dagger hidden in his sleeve and immediately grabbed his arm to stop him. But he shook me off and thrust the knife toward Jack. There was no time to dodge. I could only step in front of Jack. In that instant, countless memories flashed through my mind. I remembered the day I stood by the window, looking down, when Jack's crying suddenly sounded behind me. I remembered Makoto finding me back then, smiling as he threatened me. Once there's a stepfather, there's always a stepmother. His good days are still ahead of him. I remembered the night Jack had a fever, when he sent me voice messages crying, asking, Dad, did you stop wanting me again? I remembered sitting by his bedside, feeding him medicine, when he suddenly hugged me and whispered, Dad, I love you. A dull pain struck my back. Jack had been frightened. His small hands clutched tightly at my clothes as he burst into loud tears. My face turned pale as I turned around. The kindergarten security guards and several parents had already pinned down Makoto, who was laughing like a madman. At that moment, Willow finally arrived. She ran over, grabbed my hand, and said anxiously, I'm sorry, I came too late. My vision blurred. I shook my head and slowly closed my eyes as my voice weakened. No, you found me. You found me within fate. The next second, Willow angrily pinched the point under my nose and snapped. Stop acting pitiful. He stabbed your notebook in your bag. What are you pretending for? I was speechless. At that moment, I thought, perhaps when that petal fell earlier, I had regained the courage to fight against fate again. If love means being brave, then no matter how difficult it becomes, you will still stand in front of that person without hesitation. The wail of ambulances and police sirens approached. Under the setting sun, the shadows on the ground tangled together closely. Willow suddenly spoke again. With a cold snort, she asked, The ring, did you really lose it? She sounded very concerned about it, as if she had been holding the question back for a long time. I looked at her and grinned mischievously. No, it's on me. Tonight, you can find it yourself. She froze for a moment, then pinched me hard. Let's see each other every day from now on. Willow, extra story. Chapter 1. The first year after he left, she raised their child alone. Sometimes Willow couldn't understand it. How could raising a child be even more exhausting than giving birth? Such a tiny little creature, yet when he cried, his voice could pierce through 3 entire floors. Even when his throat grew hoarse, he still refused to stop. But sometimes, when she woke suddenly from dreams in the dead of night, she would still think of him. Emotion and reason were constantly fighting each other. Back then she had been unable to accept the reversal of her feelings and had fainted, ending up in the hospital. When she woke up again, he had already disappeared. Old Master Liu told her that he had taken 2 million yuan and agreed to the divorce. After that, he vanished from the world without a trace. She didn't care whether that story was true or not. She was only confused. Was she really worth only 2 million? If he was leaving anyway, he should have at least taken more. At that time she still hadn't sorted out what exactly existed between them. But she understood one thing very clearly. Even if she hated him, they were still meant to be bound together forever. Chapter 2. The third year after he left, she still hadn't found him. Because her reason kept resisting the reversed emotions, she began suffering from constant headaches. Even painkillers no longer helped much. Makoto came to see her and asked, Are you planning to die from the pain? What does that have to do with you? She frowned, too lazy even to answer him. Instead, she simply called security and told them not to let random strangers in anymore. Makoto refused to give up. He kept pestering her, asking why she wouldn't at least try being with him. Willow replied coldly, "My emotions may be confused, but I haven't lost my memory, and even if I had amnesia, that doesn't mean I've lost my mind." She wasn't angry, she was merely indifferent. Such a proud person. Even her hatred was something she refused to waste, so no matter how much her feelings were reversed, she would never love him. Chapter 3. The 4th year after he left. By then, Makoto was already close to collapsing. More than once, Willow overheard him arguing with the system. That was how she learned the truth about this world. With the help of the system, Makoto possessed a skill that could reverse emotions. Before this world, he had easily completed several conquest missions using that ability. Instead of exchanging his rewards for rebirth, he had become addicted to the thrill of controlling other people's lives. He wandered from one conquest world to another. He once questioned the system angrily. If this is only an F-rank vacation scenario, why is the difficulty so high? The system said something she couldn't hear. Makoto was so furious that he swept everything off the table. Damn system, how can you just leave like that? Not enough energy. Then what about me? What am I supposed to do? He even stopped her in the street once, pleading in a low voice, "You just have to like me. Once I finish the mission and leave this world, you'll be able to meet him again." Liar. She didn't believe him. Looking at the man standing in front of her, broken and desperate, she felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Suddenly she thought of George from years ago. When she woke up back then, the only thing he had left behind was a divorce agreement with his signature on it. She still didn't understand why things had turned out that way, but she did understand one thing. People should always pay the price for their choices. So there was no need to complete any mission. Let everything end in this world. Let them all die. After all, she didn't find any of it very meaningful anymore. Chapter 4. The 5th year after he left, Jack ran to her and had a huge argument with her. Every time there was a parent-teacher meeting, he never told anyone at home. When she asked why, he only said he wanted his dad to attend, not his mom. His little body trembled. His voice filled with anger, grief, and frustration. He shouted, "You're a bad mom. It's been so many years and you still can't even find dad." They had been arguing like this for years. Willow only felt wronged. After all, she was the one who wanted to find him the most. Her head began to hurt again. Perhaps because she had stayed in this world too long. The system's energy had weakened. She had gradually grown used to this kind of pain. Annoyed, Willow pushed him away. "Then go find him yourself." Jack angrily turned and walked away. "Fine, I'll find him myself." But those words suddenly seemed to awaken something in her. She paused, then called out to him, "Do you still remember Uncle Ito?" Jack responded reluctantly. Willow said, "He's the only one who knows where your dad is." Just because she couldn't find him didn't mean others couldn't. Because of the system's interference, she had been unable to discover any trace of him. But perhaps, in reverse, the system itself could be used to locate him. Jack's eyes widened with excitement. Really? From that day on, she stopped searching for George's whereabouts. She deliberately gave Makoto a faint sliver of hope, as if she had completely given up. Only she knew the truth. Give up? Not a chance. Chapter 5. She actually found him. Chapter 6. All she had asked Jack to do was go home and grab some clothes. Yet somehow he managed to drop his smartwatch into the lake. Now he was crying and making a fuss about wanting his special watch back. It was unbearably noisy. Even when she bought him a brand new one, he refused to accept it. When she asked why, Jack sniffled and said, "It has Dad's phone number in it." George's phone number. Her chest tightened painfully. Even she didn't have that number. So she bent down and searched the icy lake inch by inch. She fished in the freezing water for an entire night. Jack squatted by the lakeside holding a flashlight for her. His cheeks puffed up in determination. Behind him, the villa glowed brightly in the dark. Before long, rain began to fall again. When she finally retrieved the watch, Jack happily transferred the SIM card into the new one. Then he tossed away the umbrella and flashlight and ran off on his short little legs. Willow was furious. Both of them were so heartless. She grabbed Jack and glared at him. "Give me the phone number." Chapter 7. Pear blossoms fall again in the courtyard. Another year gone by. Moonlight spills across the empty steps in the quiet night. In dreams the flute and drums play the old melodies. When I wake, tears stain the rouge upon my face. Little Mountain, recited again and again. Half asleep and half awake, Willow seemed to see him. She saw him searching for medicine for her. She heard him sigh bitterly and say, "I really can't stand you." Did he really not want to endure her anymore? Did he hate her now? Willow didn't want to be hated. In her confusion, she suddenly remembered something from a very long time ago. George proposing to her with the grass ring she had woven. At that moment back then, her heart had skipped a beat. She saw flower petals falling through the air. If there were flowers, Would he propose to her again? So she whispered, "Shoo, the flowers are falling."